welcome everyone to episode 3 of Shark Attack Case Files. So today we're going to head to North America, to the USA, and just north of San Diego. So San Diego here, just north of San Diego, in this area here, La Jolla. If you say it with an H, I think you do. Yeah. So the attack took place just in this little cove here, just off Alligator Head. Yeah, so let's just kick off with some statistics. So yeah, of the 1416 global great white shark fatalities, 192 of those documented great white shark fatalities took place in the US, have taken place in the US, and 20 of those fatalities have happened in California. The first documented fatality was 1899. I'm sure there was more before that, but there you go, not documented. And the last fatality was 2020, so not that long ago. Yeah, so this attack took place, yeah, just off Alligator Head, which is just north of San Diego, as you've seen in the map. And it took place on Sunday, June the 14th, way back in 1959. And the victim was a 33-year-old male called Robert Pamperin, and he was diving with his friend, and they diving for abalone, which is like a type of shellfish that they particularly like eating in Asia. Yeah, no idea why, but there you go. So the shark was a great white shark, and it was a yeah, although it's not substantiated, a very large shark, between 6 or 7 meters in length, which is, yeah, possibly close to 20 feet. So very large shark. Yeah, and the time of the attack was in the afternoon at 17:10 hours. So yeah, they were just off the coast here, just out here. If you can see this on the visual. Yeah, so the water depth, they were really in no more than 40 feet of water out there, diving for these abalone. They sort of go up from the surface down, just not diving with air tanks or anything, just scuba, really, just masks. They go up for air, go down, plenty good enough, and then they sort of go down to the bottom, get the abalone, put them in nets, and then come back up. Or they have a tether, they tie them, and then carry on, fishing for these shellfish. Yeah, so the environment obviously is the Pacific Ocean. It was slightly overcast conditions. I think it was a pleasant 21 degrees air temperature, and the visibility in the water was about 7 meters. And the injury was, although not instantaneous, it was obviously a fatal injury. And then basically the narrative is, as I said, Robert Pamperin, or Bob as he's known to his friends, was diving with this guy, Gerald Lur, and they were diving for these abalone roughly 50 meters offshore. And these guys had been sort of friends for a couple of years, just had been diving together. So yeah, and you can see, although I think this guy Bob Pamperin was quite a large guy. He wasn't 6 foot. He was a bit more than 6 foot, about 6'2", 220 pounds. So he was a definitely a big object for this shark to take. Yeah, and the shark, as I said, could have been potentially a 20-footer female, which is obviously extremely rare shark on today's standards. So yeah, so the narrative basically of this attack was, yeah, Pamperin was diving with his companion Lur, and they basically drifted slowly apart, and they were separated by about 10 to 15 meters, with Lur being roughly 20 meters from the point or the shore, and then Pamperin being, roughly 30 to 40 meters from the shore. So he was obviously further out. Pamperin was further out, and his friend was a little bit closer in. And then unexpectedly, Lur heard Pamperin yell out, sort of, "Help me, help me!" He turned quickly in the direction in which he heard his friend's voice, and he saw his companion like completely upright out of the water, sort of unnaturally high, sort of moving backwards and forwards with his mask gone. So obviously it's like something out of Jaws, that one. And he began swimming towards his friend, thinking that he had cramp. I mean, that'd be some insane cramp, but there you go. And while looking at his friend, he sort of later he sort of recounted that everything seemed to happen in slow motion. He sort of watched in disbelief as his friend sort of disappeared beneath the surface with a sort of a crimson hue along, amongst the water, and he sort of obviously startled. He dived beneath the surface to see if he could see his friend, and he actually saw his friend, in the jaws of this shark, sort of feet first, with his sort of torso hanging out of the shark. And it's at that point that he estimated the shark to be, 6 to 7 meters in length. Although he did say 7 meters, but obviously, if you understand these sort of old diving masks, and particularly with the hue of the water, objects can appear, slightly larger, up to 33% bigger and 25% closer than they obviously are in land, just because of the magnification effect of the water. Yeah. Uh, so yeah, I mean, as this drama was unfolding, there was actually another guy who witnessed the attack. There was a guy called William Abbott, and he was stood on an elevated rock position overlooking the site, and he was alerted to the event by the screams of help that Pamperin let out, and he also observed Pamperin sort of like thrashing around in the water. Yeah, as if he was like basically trying to run away from something, and then he also noticed the guy sort of disappear beneath the surface, sort of eerie stuff, and basically in the water, like Lur could see his friend in the mouth of the shark, with his legs not visible, and he basically had to come up to surface to get some air. So once he came up to surface to get some air, he basically dived back down again to see if he could help his friend, and he basically said he observed the shark sort of sitting on the bottom, sort of jerking side to side, as if it was trying to like either swallow the guy or spit the guy out, and he wasn't sure. And then he had to return to the surface again to inhale air, and he dived down again, and he swam to the bottom, sort of waving his arms, trying to frighten the shark away. But obviously the shark, completely ignored him. The shark's not going to turn up at McDonald's sort of waving his hands at this guy either, is he? So 200 million years of evolution. He's just the shark obviously, yeah, completely ignored the hand waving, and then realizing he couldn't do anything, Lur basically swam towards the beach, and about 10 meters in, the other guy who was up on the rocks, Abbott's, he'd swum out as well. No idea why. Then they're not going to be able to do much, but yeah, upon reaching the shore, they basically, both of them, notified the authorities, and within less than an hour, there was like 10 qualified scuba divers on site, and they spent 2 hours searching. They put a helicopter up. They couldn't find nothing. The only thing they found was sort of like one of the fins floating up along the beach, and then they also found actually a dead seal. After several hours later, they also found this guy's sort of inner tube containing two abalone that he'd caught previously. Yeah, and then there's also like what makes this attack particularly interesting is the contributory factors. You'll often find, or often find reading these case files, that it's not always just an arbitrary attack. There's sometimes, or often, there'll be some contributory factor of why perhaps the shark, was basically in the area, or attacked a human. And in this particular case, that like the first thing is that 2 hours previous to these guys being in the area fishing for abalone, there'd also been some spear fishermen who'd speared a bunch of fish in the area. So obviously there was some activity there, and then also there was a U.S. naval sort of, I don't know what you call it, like an exercise, and there was one of the sailors was swimming off a nearby rock, and he badly lacerated himself, and there was believed to have been a considerable amount of blood in the water, or human blood. And then third, about 600 meters west of this cove, there's a small rockery with like many like pinnipeds, harbour seals, which obviously is definitely a prey source for the shark. And then fourth contributing factor, which is probably the most important one, is that there was actually a dead whale washed up the night before on the beach, some 800 meters north of where this attack took place. Right, you imagine like all these different senses and smells in the water. It definitely contributed to perhaps like bringing this shark into the area. But I think this was unbeknown to these two guys. So you couple that in with like the surface currents and the wind, they would have dispersed all that fluid out over the site. Yeah, and this particular attack did go to a, like I call it a tribunal, but there was a, yeah, there was a tribunal of sorts that did take place, and Lur in fact emphatically stated that it was a great white shark, even though at the time I believe there was some discussion about the species, but he later verified through pictures and stuff that it definitely was a shark that attacked this guy. His friend Robert Pamperin was definitely attacked by a great white shark. Yeah. So, and the craziest thing of all is, if you remember back to what he witnessed beneath the water when he saw his friend in the mouth of this shark, sort of on the bottom, where he wasn't sure whether the shark was trying to eat his friend or spit him out. Actually, a year later, when this attack took place, there were some geological divers who were diving in the area. I don't know what the purpose was. It's maybe some geological mapping, but they actually found a skeleton which matched this guy's description, which matched Robert Pamperin's description. They just found this skeleton on the bottom. So, perhaps yeah, the shark did swim off and then spat him out basically, which does happen. Like often sharks, if they don't like what they've consumed, they will regurgitate it. So yeah, perhaps that's what this guy was perhaps eaten and then regurgitated. But yeah, he would have died quite quickly. From the severity of the initial injuries, I imagine he died of blood loss, and then yeah, later the shark spat him out. So yeah, that's another crazy attack for the book. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that one.